Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wills, Women, and Wealth podcast. I'm Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning and probate attorney, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. We're here to empower women who value their health, wealth, and the legacies they're creating. This podcast delves into a diverse range of subjects encompassing finance, law, mental and physical health, and beyond. Our commitment is to furnish you with invaluable insights, engaging expert interviews, and enlightening episodes that address your questions on wills, estate planning, and probate matters. Remember, this is your community, and we want to hear from you. Engage with us, ask questions, suggest topics. Let's build a dialogue. Reach out to us on social media or leave us a comment below. Your input fuels the conversations we have. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming content. We appreciate your support. And if you enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Your review helps amplify our reach and brings our content to more listeners. And now on with the podcast. As we close out Black History Month, today's episode is all about Black excellence in action, specifically how we protect the wealth and legacy we work so hard to build. You'll hear highlights from 3 powerful conversations with impact makers who are shaping the future in their respective fields. First, I speak with Andre Lingham, founder and president of the Center for Elder Justice and Education. Andre sheds light on the rising threat of elder fraud and financial abuse, issues that can devastate families and drain the very assets meant to be passed down. Protecting our elders is a crucial part of estate planning, ensuring that wealth stays within our communities instead of being lost to scams and exploitation. Next, we hear from Tina Marie Marshall, a seasoned realtor, broker, and owner of Maryland Prime Realty Company. She shares insights on navigating real estate sales during probate, one of the most challenging aspects of settling an estate. Whether you're managing a loved one's estate or planning ahead for your own, understanding the probate process can mean the difference between preserving generational wealth or losing it to legal fees and delays. Finally, we close with Martha Underwood, founder and CEO of Prism, a cutting-edge digital vault company. Estate planning is only effective if your loved ones can access the right documents when they need them. Martha's work ensures that wills, trusts, and critical financial records are securely stored and easily accessible, helping families avoid confusion, delays, and unnecessary legal battles. Each of these conversations highlights the power of preparation, protection, and planning, fundamental pillars of Black excellence when it comes to securing wealth for future generations. Let's dive in. You've obviously touched on how it impacted you personally with your experiences with your mom, but what have you seen through all the years, that you've been out in the community? You've been focused in Howard County, and that's, for those of you watching, that's in Maryland, Howard County, Maryland. What have you seen? What are some examples of like elder fraud that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so we break it down typically in 2 different categories. One is known person exploitation, and that's power of attorney abuse, home improvement scams from a person that claims to be a handyman. That would be people that sort of on a regular basis that ingratiates themselves in your life, that quote unquote wants to help you out doing things. The second part is unknown exploitation. And that's where we find the online romance scams.
Hmm.
um, where they contact, or you have your profile on a dating site or a social media site, and they contact you and you build up basically an online relationship. The bottom line, most of these relationships, and they end up wanting you to send them money. And a typical MO is they're Americans working overseas. And they are excellent at what they do. They groom you. It could take 1 month or it could take a year. Eventually, once they feel that they can exploit you, that's when they start asking for money. One of the most common ones now that's really, really picking up steam is cryptocurrency.
Hmm.
So basically, they'll contact you sometimes through a website, email, text messages, but they'll build up a relationship and say, hey, have you ever thought about investing in cryptocurrency? Nah, not really. I'm not, I don't really understand how that whole thing works. Well, you can make a lot of money quick. So why don't we do this? Send me $500. We'll invest it and then look at it for a couple months and see how it does. Okay, $500 isn't really a whole lot. So you'll send it to them. They will set up a fake account where you can actually go log on and you can see your account increase, quote unquote, increase in value quickly. So as you're doing that, your natural inclination is, man, you know, I made $1,000 in a month. Your natural inclination is to throw more money at it. So you do that, and it's called pig butchering. And they set you up for the kill. They fatten you up for the slaughter, basically. But it gets to a point where you log on, and the website that you logged on to is totally disappeared, or you can't reach it, and your money's gone. That's a huge one that we're really seeing. So, it's estimated that, seniors lose between 3 and $36 billion per year in these different types of scams and fraud. So it's a lot of money. They come up with a lot of different excuses, but they know how to play the game. The largest amount from a Howard County victim I saw was $1.5 million.
Oh.
And this was a gentleman that had retired from the NSA, had a PhD, a brilliant person, but he had got caught up into this wanting the fantasy to come true. And I always say it doesn't matter your education, because I can tell you most of my victims were educated people, had saved money, and had assets and resources. And that's the type of people that these predators, and I do call them predators, that's who they target.
I'm so glad, Andre, that you mentioned that, this type of abuse can happen to anyone at any educational level because, I would imagine, like, when it happens to you, there's a certain sense of embarrassment, there's shame that,
Absolutely.
this, your PhD, masters, and so forth, and yet it happened to you. So when that shame takes over you, then you don't want to speak out. You don't want to talk to the authorities and let them know that you've been a victim. Could you speak to that briefly?
Yeah, and actually that's one of the reasons that you see the big disparity in the 3 billion to 36 billion per year. Because you have a lot of older adults, again, out of fear, embarrassment, not wanting to let their kids know that they've lost hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So unfortunately, it would be nice to get a real number on what victims are losing, but a lot of them just don't want to share that they've been victimized, and I totally understand it. One of the things I suggest that if your parents are victimized in whatever scam, the absolute worst thing you can say is, how can you fall for this you're a lot smarter than this. I can tell you we can all be scammed given the right situation.
Mhm. Why is, in your opinion, education a crucial component of combating elder fraud?
Being educated with a lot of these scams will stop it right at the door. And when I first started, I kind of geared my presentation, which I still do, to the older community. But I always say, now I want 8 to 80 to attend these presentations. And the reason being, for instance, the foreign lottery scam. And typically you'll get a letter and they'll, if you respond once, they'll continue to send mail letters over and over and over again. So if you're 19, 20, 21 and you're visiting grandma or grandpa, and all of a sudden you see all these letters piled up on the table or in the kitchen, typically you would look at it and say, oh, it's just junk mail. But they could actually be being exploited, and if you don't know the signs and what to look for, then you would just kind of blow it off as, oh, it's just junk mail, it's just this or that. At that point, you could intervene and say, hey, grandma, what is this? Oh, I've been getting these letters about lotteries and stuff. Well, have you been sending them any money or anything? Well, just a few dollars here or there. So, so educating younger people gets you to, gets them educated. And also when you look at, say, power of attorney issues, say if, you're a power of attorney for an older adult, educating, monitoring accounts, different things like that will, help you see the signs that your mom or dad or grandparents may be exploited or being exploited.
When you were talking about the person who exploited your mom, right?
Right.
This person was seen as, a friendly, it was, a friend or someone known. And the person, I think you mentioned that she was having financial, difficulties, may or may not have. And I think in when we were preparing for this episode, you mentioned that that's one of the red flags in, having someone as a power of attorney agent, that's a no-go, right? If that person is having financial difficulties, and I talk about this with my clients, that's not the person that you want as your power of attorney agent, because it's too tempting. It's people say, well, I'll just take a little bit and I'll put it back. And that's how it starts. A little, a little, a little. And first of all, a little is a breach. I don't care what the size of the withdrawal is. It's a breach of that fiduciary duty. But it's finding, just using common sense, being just aware of the people that you are entrusting with these, powerful roles in your life. Can you talk to that?
Absolutely. Power of attorneys are an interesting animal, and I really didn't understand what they meant until I kind of researched it. One of the things that I find, and I know that you don't do this, but a lot of attorneys or people preparing them will just prepare them and not educate the person on actually what a power of attorney is. And I've had older adults say, well, my daughter has a power of attorney, so I can't do anything. And, that's absolutely not true. You're still in control and you can still manage everything. You just give another person power to do that, for you. The key is, number one, and I, preach this in my presentation, know all of your assets, know where they are, kind of combine everything, and then sit down with an attorney and figure out how you want your power of attorney constructed. That helps out a lot. Second, like you said, if the person's having financial issues, that's the last person that you want to designate as your agent in the power of attorney. I know we had one case where we interviewed the suspect, and his response was, well, what difference does it make? When mom passes, I'm getting it anyway, which mom may outlive him. So, and if all her money goes, again, we're back to square one, where the citizens or government may have to supplement or pick up where mom may have had a couple $1 million saving for her long term. But the key is also, as an older adult, and if you have someone as an agent, your power of attorney, is to monitor everything, monitor all your accounts. Just just keep aware of what's going on, and just, because what we see a lot of times, they just turn it over. Say, I'm not worried. My son or daughter's taking care of everything. But you still need to monitor.
Absolutely. And for particularly folks watching in Maryland or Maryland residents, the power of attorney in Maryland, actually, as of October 1st of last year, went through significant changes. So it's a good idea if you have a power of attorney that was executed prior to October of last year to meet with an estate planning attorney, lay eyes on it, see whether an update is necessary, because you don't necessarily need to like default to family members, right? Because the criteria is a trusted individual. There are some people, that some of our elderly, clients whose kids live abroad because their professions have taken them there, or they live out of state, and the people they have close to them could be neighbors, could be friends, people, in their community organization that they belong to. So it's that person of trust. Trust is the North Star, if you will, in choosing who that individual is. Are they a responsible person? Have they proven to you through your prior interactions with them that they are reliable, that they are trustworthy, right? Just because a person is a relative, they don't automatically, slide into that spot. Be critical in who you select. We've touched on the fact that the threats can be internal through family members. They can be external, people calling in. But now with the rise of AI, oh my goodness, that just adds another layer and just launches this issue into like hyperspace. Like how, talk to us about AI.
That's a real game changer also. And I'll give you a prime example. Up until a couple years ago, when you would get emails from overseas, with whatever scam they're running, one of the signs would be misspellings, and words that should be capitalized, it's not capitalized. So now what they do is they go and use an AI app, and they'll create this letter or document that has perfect English grammar, and you will never know that it was created by artificial intelligence. So before, where there were certain signs with that, now we don't see that. Also, voice cloning. I mean, my voice is on YouTube. You have a podcast. There's certain apps out there that can clone your voice. So for instance, if they have the right app, they can clone your voice, call a loved one claiming to be you, and it's going to sound exactly like you. Now even FaceTiming, they can, it's one app, and I downloaded it, and I was singing, I can't remember what song it was, but it just took my face. I downloaded the music, and my lips was moving like I was actually singing the song. So we even have to look at FaceTiming now. So it's so many different levels of how they're coming at older adults. One of the things that I suggest is, number one, if you're transferring or moving or requested to move large sums of money or any type of money, have a backup or a person that you can run it by. Say, can you look at this to make sure it's legit, different things like that. Because when you see emails, it looks like it's coming from, especially like a Bank of America or different things like that. They have it down to a science. So you really have to be vigilant. Second, if you get a call from, say, the family member in distress call, where they call you and say, hey, I've been in an accident. Unfortunately, it's my fault. I killed someone. I'm being arrested. Can you send money for bail? If you get a call from a family member requesting money, make sure you have a password set up between the two of you. So that way, if a scammer is doing it, they wouldn't know the password. So say if your grandson calls with, that he needs money, okay, well, what's the password or what's our code? Um, that's really kind of one of the only ways to get around this now, because they've perfected this, and it's only going to get better, unfortunately.
Wow. It's frightening,
It
that
is.
you can't, and there's really nothing that we can do except, educate ourselves, be proactive, connect with those elderly members in our family, in our circle, in our neighborhood, and just try to be that resource for them and just keep an eye on each other.
I think that if we can get the relatives and the beneficiaries who will directly benefit from the distribution of assets, from the sale of real estate, or the decedent's, personal effects. I think that if everyone can come together, and it's very difficult when you have the emotions that are running high after, the loss of a loved one, and you'll see people who kind of surface and they kind of come from every different direction who may not have been involved to the end of life of that loved one. I think if you can bring everyone back to the table to lay out the plan, and to even to help them be involved or feel like they're involved in the development of that plan, I think it can help to assuage some of the anxiety around what this person is, quote unquote, maybe what they're doing, or why do they get to make all the decisions.
Appreciate, as always, I appreciate your insights and your wisdom so much. I want to again return to that lens of that PR, that executor lens,
Yeah.
going through this process. Now, as soon as the fact that the estate is open, it's public, the PR is probably going to be bombarded with ads from realtors, people offering to liquidate, sell property and stuff, and it seems like, from what I can tell, just from the outside in, and listening to you as the expert here, is that it would really benefit the PR, the personal representative, to have a guide, somebody walking alongside them. But what I've learned from you, and what I would like you to share with the audience, is that there's a difference in levels of service that you can get when, considering working with a realtor or a real estate agent. And again, I know we'll distinguish those in a minute, but yeah, I mean, talk to us a bit about that, because it's really, you're being bombarded, and how do you know? And as a follow-up, tell us why it's probably not a good idea for you to just try to do this on your own, DIY it.
Yeah. So as I would encourage anyone to, many people have purchased homes and they sometimes think, oh, I could do this. I can open the door to a property, and, I've found my property on the internet myself. Or I've heard people say, I've pulled up to the new home community and I walked right in there and I signed a contract and I didn't need a realtor. And I would encourage them to say, you have no idea what you signed. And the person who may be there representing you is not representing you. They are representing the builders and the other side, but they're never going to really tell you that or really explain to you the difference. So it is extremely important to always seek a competent real estate professional who specializes, hopefully, in the type of home you want to purchase, or the type of property you want to purchase, or commercial business or land that you want to purchase. If they have experience in that area, it's extremely important, because there are so many different nuances between what Elsa alluded to earlier in terms of different levels of service. So there is what's called a full service agency, and my brokerages, Maryland Prime, DC Prime, and Virginia Prime Realty Companies, are all full service agencies. We do not do what is called limited service listings. And that's basically where you could contact, or some company might contact you and say, hey, we can list your property. You don't need a realtor. You don't need to pay all those high commissions. We can list it for a flat fee, and just put it in the MLS, the multiple listing service, online. And people will see your home on the R site, the Z site. Y'all know those companies. I don't like saying their names. But those companies who advertise real estate listings. And that's all you have to do because you're in a strong seller's market to sell your home. And I'll tell you, that is not correct. Oftentimes, those companies or those people are using the licensing of a real estate professional such as myself, but not myself. We don't do that. We want to provide full and complete service. And in doing that, you're required to provide as a seller full and complete disclosure of the property and providing all the required disclosures legally to those buyers. And these companies that are often practicing, these limited service companies, are not in your area located physically, which means they're not as familiar with all the different local, county, and specific jurisdictional addendums that are required to pass with the sale of a property in certain areas. So oftentimes when going through this process, when I'm dealing with a seller who has contracted with one of these companies, they don't have the proper and appropriate disclosure for my buyers. So I often have to step in because I want to make sure that my buyer is clear and that they're covered. I will often have to try to help them navigate through that process, even though the seller is not my client, in order to provide protection to my buyer client. But I am not like most agents. Most agents will not do that for you because they know that they're putting their client in a position to make sure that they could potentially provide a lawsuit to the seller at a later time, because they know that the seller didn't provide a specific or necessary disclosure, such as a federal or a local, state, or a specific county lead-based paint addendum, and the child gets sick or the dog licks the wall. You know, any of those things can happen. And now someone is looking for someone to pay. And they're going to go and contact those real estate agents. And when you look at those contracts that seller who may have contracted with that limited service company may have signed, they will often absolve themselves of any responsibility. So you literally have no protection. Same thing with the builder contract, new home construction. Those contracts are slighted towards the building company, and it often leaves the consumers with zero protection and zero recourse. So it's very much buyer beware and seller beware that you're contacting, and have a competent real estate professional in your corner that understands the nuances and all those requirements for your specific home and your market in your area.
So should the PR just, forgive me. So the PR should just come out and say, listen, are you a full service realtor? Just easy question for everybody's listening. Are you a full service realtor? And you've already told us what the benefits are, because like in everything, you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
Right.
You want to ask that professional, what are you going to do for me? How are you going to market my home? How will you prepare all the paperwork and the documents? How long is this process expected to take? What are the statistics for homes of this type, this size, this area? What can I expect to receive? You want to make sure that that company has provided you with a list of not just comparable homes, but also with what the competition is today. Is an often overlooked number that a limited service company will never give you, in terms of understanding that just because the homes that are on my street in my neighborhood sold for example, $400,000 last month, if the market has slid or appreciated in any way, it does not capture those potential dollars. So the market may have come up, or there may be only one of that type of home in that neighborhood that's highly sought after. And we know that people want to get in there because of the school district. And a realtor or real estate agent might adjust up the price to compensate because there's no competition or a very limited number of homes that are like this in this condition in this area. Likewise, you may also need to adjust down, because if that limited service company is not familiar with your neighborhood, your community, those comparable homes that are truly comparable and not just figures from the internet, that they will understand the nuances that a home in, for example, Suitland, Maryland, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, may not fetch the same as a home that's 5 minutes down the street in Clinton or Temple Hills. It may not fetch the same price, even though it is within the realm of a comparable sale that an appraiser could use and look at. So those nuances are very, very can be very costly if they don't have a competent real estate professional to advise them and to walk them through that sale process from start to finish. And when you're also on the market, once you've listed the property, the home, that real estate professional should be monitoring other comparable home sales that are on the market to try to capture and maybe sometimes adjust the price up or even adjust the price down if more homes enter the market. So those types of nuances are critical to having a professional, because that could equate to a huge and extreme loss of dollars for those potential heirs or beneficiaries. So it's not just often what's cheap or less expensive, this flat fee, thinking that the heirs will inherit more because you've spent less money to hire a limited service company, flat fee company. You might lose out on $15,000, $20,000, or $30,000 because that limited service company didn't capture the nuances of the market and the day that you went to market.
This is a great opportunity for me to just jump in here and talk about the duty that the personal representative has to get the best price.
Yes.
For a property. They have a duty. And why is that so important? Because their job is not only to make sure that the beneficiaries receive, what's coming to them through a will, or if they died without a will, through the intestacy process, but they have a duty to make sure that, first of all, that the property maintains its integrity, that it's still, throughout the probate process, that it's still being maintained, doing the landscaping and all of that. And all of those are acceptable estate expenses, meaning that you don't have to come out of pocket for them. Same for realtor fees, right? Those are, part of the process. The personal representative is not coming out of pocket for this. So that's yet another reason for you to seek the best, the highest level of service that you can, and somebody that's really going to make sure that the property is presented in the best possible way to make sure you can get top dollar, because top dollar means that there's more money coming into that estate and more money to distribute to the beneficiaries. We hit it off. There was no question. Right. Our upbringing is the same hard work ethic, which explains a lot about your drive and your passion to succeed. Now, I always like to, keep it real on these shows, and I want you to share. I would like you to share. What challenges did you face navigating the tech industry as a woman of color? Because you and I both know that it's, predominantly, white industry, as is mine in estate planning. But I'd be curious to know, what some of your challenges were.
So I'd say one of the main challenges is always having to justify being in the room or being in the position, and that I'm not there to just check a box. I always had to fight for that promotion, right? When I saw some of my white counterparts just get walked into it, and not being told the rules of the game, to where I saw, executives take some of my white coworkers, men, and it's like, let me take you under my wing. Let me take you to this happy hour. Let me tell you what just happened in that meeting. Or going into a meeting and everyone else had a pre-meeting and I'm kind of in the dark, right? And then as I moved up the ladder, it didn't get any easier, because then, while I had already proved myself, and here I am, I'm an executive and accomplished at that, I was always having to justify my decisions or my strategic plans as it came, when it came to what we wanted to do for a product, what I wanted to maybe to do for my team. Those, I always had to justify it. And that was a huge challenge for me, because what it did was it put me in a perpetual state of, oh, I got to validate myself. again.
Yeah.
I got to validate myself again in this meeting. And that's hard to carry every day going into, some top high profile meetings. I mean, I'm talking about CEO, C-suite in there all the time,
Right.
and always having to justify yourself. So it's like you're at a heightened state because you can get caught off guard with a question or anything else, but that your white men coworkers don't have to deal with. They present something and it's just accepted as law or accepted as truth. And yet here I am having to spend 15, 20 minutes justifying my course of action. And that got very frustrating. And so that was a huge challenge.
Did that change at all? Or did it get worse the higher that you went or the more advanced you went in your career? Or did it stay pretty much the same and it was like, okay, here we go again?
It pretty much was here we go again. I just think that the stakes were higher because I was higher, but it was the same. It was like, okay, I've seen this before. I know what I got to do. Or just I'm prepared for it. Right. So I'm prepared for it. So how I tried to navigate around it was to always answer the question before it's even asked. So, and that's what I trained my team to do. So whenever I would go in and, for example, say that it was a new feature that I was going to be deploying or proposing for one of my software applications, I'd say, here's the feature as it exists today. Here's the feature that we want to change it to. This is what our user base, when we tested it, this is how they responded to it. And here are projections based on what we think, this change will do positively for the company and for the application, right? And now people would think, oh, everyone has to do that. Yeah, typically. But the difference is Tom will go in and say, hey, I want to make this change. And it's like, okay, you can make that change. No questions on why. Did you test it? Who's going to use it? Did you talk to the business side on this, or this was a tech decision? But yet when I go in, I get all those questions and more. And that's the difference. And so I said, let me just kill it before it even starts by answering those questions before it's even asked.
So it's like it's a double-edged sword because you've got to be, it sounds like to me that you've got to be more prepared than anybody else in the room, which is a double-edged sword because it's quite stressful and you've got to anticipate every single question, but it makes you that much more of a, may I say, a badass, like in the corporate setting.
Absolutely. And that's what doing that actually helped my career, because then the more and more I did it, actually, it helped them not question me more, right? Because they're like, Martha's going to come prepared. She's already going to have the answer to it. And so that really helped me. The other thing that I'd say as Black women that I experience, especially at the executive level, is I'd go into meetings and they would address my person who reported to me, my teammate.
I think that so many women who are watching, professional women who are watching this, can just resonate going, girl.
They're probably like, girl.
I know.
Right. And so what I did to combat that is I would then because I was always early to a meeting and I would sit at the head. And they just like, okay, well, let's talk to Tom over here. And I'm like, excuse me, meetings with me, and I'm the decision maker. And so I started strategically coming to meetings late, like 5 minutes late or 3 minutes late. And they're like, oh, the meeting can start now. Martha's here. Then it kills all of the other things that I have to deal with on, oh, you're who we're meeting with. And again, it's an annoyance, but that's how I started to combat it. And then as vendors, as new executives started to get used to me, then I didn't have to do that. But it's more of trying to set the pace. Like, look, I'm here. I earned my spot here. Not just here to check a box. And let's go.
Now I want to switch the focus to your amazing company. Tell us, what is Prism, and why did you create it, and who's involved with you?
Sure. So Prism is a digital vault built specifically to help ease the burden that people deal with, the administrative burden in particular that people deal with at end of life. So as caregivers, I'm the caregiver for the most part for my mom and dad, 82 and 83. They're still in Miami, Florida. I'm in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. I cannot run down every time they have an issue or want me to read a document for them. And so I really created it for them. And what really cemented it for me is being in the bank, being on the back end on the tech side. I see how, or I understand the processes that we go through when someone passes, right? Typically, the bank tries to contact the beneficiaries. If they can't, they'll put an ad out in the newspaper. No one reads a newspaper these days. It will sit in the account anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending on what the state law is. And after that, it goes to the state. And so seeing that, I'm like, I work hard. My parents worked hard. I did not want this to happen to them. And so how can I help using technology? So I built a platform that allows you to connect all of your bank account information. Think like a mint.com, to where you can aggregate all of that information into one place. Then you can categorize or catalog all of your heirlooms, or if you got that Jimi Hendrix guitar or that, special gun, you can put that manufacturer's like a serial number on there and put that in there. And then you can also put all of your documents in there. And the one thing that I'm really happy about that we did, because people love their privacy, is we allow the subscribers to select when their trusted person can see this information. Can they see it now? Or do I want them to see it when I transition life? And what you're doing, even if you say, okay, I want you to see this when I transition life, is you've given them a gift, really, because people don't understand, or they underestimate, not necessarily they underestimate the impact of grief. And when someone that you love and care for transitions, sometimes you're scatterbrained. They might have told you what that password is or told you where that document is, but you can't put your hand on it because you're grief stricken. Or you're in New York and they're in California and you can't get to them fast enough, but you need to be able to handle a couple of things. You can't get to their house and go to that closet or that file cabinet. And so being in technology and seeing where we're going with that one, information is everywhere. So with information everywhere, how do I get to it? I said, we need to centralize it for this very specific thing, which is end of life, to make it easier for your loved ones to be able to handle those affairs.
I've often said on interviews and webinars that I've done that I view estate planning as a love letter to your family, because you thought enough of them to be intentional, to put pen to paper, whether it's yourself or via an attorney, and really lay everything out. And part of my passion, why I'm so fervent about what it is that I do, is that, just to be frank, in our community, communities of color, we need more education. There have been, we are just woefully behind compared to other communities in terms of how we're protecting the assets that we are accumulating. More of us are, higher education, more of us have, our own businesses, so we're amassing wealth. And by the way, a lot of those new business owners are women. So, Black women, and we are just like crushing it, when it comes to new businesses. But, our older generations, our, parents, my parents have since passed away, but, they didn't have a comprehensive estate plan. And I'm sure many people watching, most of them, their parents probably didn't. They may have had some life insurance over here, a little pocket of savings over there, but never a comprehensive strategy. So, I, and as I'm sure you do with Prism, there's so much education that is required. because the two pillars of my practice are education and empowerment, but we must start at education, letting our folks know what is there, why it's so important for them to take advantage of tools that we now have at our disposal. So one of the many reasons I was excited to have you as a guest on the show, on the podcast, is because what you're doing is such a natural complement to what we're helping people to create. And this vault, this prism, is just the next piece.
Yeah.
And, helping people have a convenient way, safe and secure. And you're going to talk and address the security aspect shortly, but a secure, safe space that makes it convenient for those who are left behind once you transition to really carry on your affairs, resolve your affairs, and do everything that would honor you, and not having your last chapter be a hot mess.
Yeah.
Just chaos.
Just chaos.
Which is what we see so often. And the fact that you're a woman of color in this space, in this relatively new space, this digital vault, because, I know that there are competitors. What makes Prism different than those that are out there?
Sure. So what makes Prism different is we do this one thing very well, which is making sure at end of life you have everything you need. A couple of our competitors, we have maybe about 3 or 4 competitors out there that's in this space. Mm-hmm. What they want to do is help you manage your life all the way from end to end. No one wants to manage their life online. I know that. I know even the new generation, the Gen Zers, are not going to manage their life online, right? And that could get very overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And so what we did was we were very intentional and very thoughtful and said, really, we want to make sure that we complement what you are doing. You're getting all of the documents ready. Like, we're not attorneys. I'm techie. You're doing all of that. You know the laws. You're guiding them on what should be in these documents. And then I'm saying we need to store it in a place and make sure that you share it with the right people so they know where it is. Because we are doing the right things. Most of the time, the women are the caregivers. And we're going to have to figure it out. So it's a little selfish of me too, because I'm like, I'm going to have to do this. So I need to have it organized and centralized, because I know that when something happens to my parents, I will be grief stricken. But when I'm ready to deal with the paperwork, it's in one place. And so the difference is we say, we just want to make sure that you can transfer your wealth and your assets that you worked so hard for to the next generation. Right? Store it in a place that everyone knows, well, that your trusted people know where it is. Mm-hmm. You can control the privacy of it. And so that's your final love letter, right? Because they know where it is. Because we've heard in the news with Aretha Franklin, like, you're finding wills here in
sofa cushions and where else?
Prince estate. Like, the thing is, we try to do the right things. We get life insurance. We try to get a will. We do our estate planning, and then we file it away in our file cabinet. But if a hurricane comes, or a tornado comes, or a fire, it's gone. And it's easier to get an original from a copy than it is to go through and get all your new copies again. So for the convenience of being able to share it with people who are no longer in your same city, you might have family who've moved away. Mm-hmm. We are saying, make sure, use something to document and let somebody know where these documents are, or these important papers are, so that when something, or if something does happen to you, they know where to look, and it's not chaos, like you said.
That wraps up today's special episode of the Wills, Women, and Wealth podcast, Wealth and Legacy Conversations, a Black Excellence special. We've heard from incredible leaders who are making a lasting impact, whether it's protecting our elders from financial fraud, navigating real estate matters after a loved one passes, or securing our most important documents with cutting-edge digital solutions. These conversations remind us that building and preserving wealth involves more than just paperwork and documents. It's about safeguarding our families, protecting our hard-earned assets, and ensuring that our legacies endure for generations to come. Now, I want to hear from you. What steps are you taking to protect your legacy? If you're ready to start or update your estate plan, I invite you to schedule a complimentary 15-minute call with a member of our team. The link will be in the show notes. Let's make sure your wealth and legacy are secure. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone you love. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and take control of your legacy.